Hello, this is Essence of Life Radio. I'm Shari Arison with the Path to Enlightenment and Inner Peace. Today with Natalie Zeituny. Hi.
Hello. Hello, Shari.
How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you.
Thank you for coming. So first I'd like to hear, who's Natalie Zeituny? Tell me about yourself.
I call myself a modern mystic.
Okay.
I've always been a mystic, truly. And I'm a modern mystic because I believe this entire existence is always evolving. And
I agree.
yes, and because it's evolving, I like to stay connected to the leading edge, the edge of evolution. This is what I'm curious about.
But before we get to that, tell me a little bit about yourself, because I know that you came to Israel as a child and then you moved to California. So maybe you can give a little bit of input of, your life, who you are, and what you did before, and then we'll get to what you're doing now.
Okay. So I was born in Beirut to a Jewish family. And life was good until the Civil War broke in 1975, 76. And unfortunately, we lost my brother who died. And we fled Lebanon as Jewish refugees from an Arab country.
How old were you at the time?
I was 5 years old. So we actually fled from Israel through Cyprus, from Beirut to Israel through Cyprus.
Okay. Through Cyprus?
Yes,
wow.
Because there was no direct migration from the southern border of Lebanon to Israel.
Okay.
And we started a new life in Israel.
Okay.
And I lived in Israel from 75 till about 98. I served in Israel in the Israeli intelligence because of my Arabic language background. And then I left Israel when I was about 24. This was about 1994, and I moved to California to start a new life. And I had a wonderful life in San Francisco.
And you were a businesswoman?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about that.
Basically, my studies, I studied engineering in the Technion in Israel. And then I gained my master's in business, my MBA. And then when I moved to the US, I started working for large high-tech corporations in the Silicon Valley.
Okay.
And then I started my own company. It looks, when I'm talking to you, it feels so far away that I'm trying to recollect everything that happened to me in California. It feels very far away.
I know, but for our listeners or people watching us, because this will be also on Facebook and YouTube, so some will listen and some will watch. It's interesting to see how people make changes from a very conventional life, to something spiritual, which I think that is also important to share.
Yes. Oh, that's wonderful. When you said that, what dawned on me is that my journey was from survival mode,
right,
moving through being as powerful as I'm able to being completely in another state of being. I would call it grace, which is truly interconnectedness to everything that's happening to me, to everybody else, in a state of grace. So there's a journey.
Yes.
I would say that from Beirut to Israel, it was mainly survival. From Israel to California, living in California for about almost 18 years, was about trying the best I can to create something, and I did. I started 2 companies. One of them was very successful, and throughout this time when I was trying to survive in a powerful mode, I revealed, or I got in touch with a much stronger power
within you.
Yes, within me.
So the spirituality was there along the way?
Yeah, but not quite expressed.
Okay.
It was very hidden. I wouldn't even dare. But in California, because in San Francisco specifically, it is such a open society and open way of perceiving that I was able to experience many, many modes of connecting to self, connecting to others, anywhere from yoga to meditation to nature-based healing, energy medicine, clairvoyance, dance, tantra, authentic relating. I mean, you name it. There's such a, like the food in Israel is so good. I think the food in California, spiritual food, is so available and so good. And
I feel the same way about Israel because I also tried so many different things here in my journey. So yeah, I can relate to that.
Yeah. So now that I'm nearing 50, it's the elements of survival and power are less relevant. What's more relevant is the truth, the truth of the moment, the truth of relating. This is why I was telling you before. I wish I could ask you questions because I'm much more interested to talk about you and
yes, before the program, you were eager to ask me, maybe at another time.
Yeah.
So when did you make that complete, if it is a complete shift to spirituality and being a spiritual teacher, because you're a spiritual teacher,
Correct.
Healer, you wrote a book.
Yes.
So tell me a little bit about that.
The shift happened, I would say, it started in 2006 when I was no longer able to even go to a corporate building. I mean, just the idea of me going to an office and doing work in the line of work that I was doing, which was information system analysis, design, implementation of large-scale corporate systems, just the idea of doing that felt so foreign to me and so wasn't in congruence with who I really am. But it was also a very scary thought, because if I'm not this, then who am I? I had no other personality or other grounding to really stand on.
I was going to say, it takes a lot of courage to let go of what's known and go to the unknown and follow your heart, follow your soul.
Exactly. Yeah. So what ended up happening is I left my business, I sold my business. I own a house in the city and I just left the house. I lived in the basement. I moved to the basement, which was unheard of. Why would I move to the basement? And then
why did you move to the basement?
Because my house felt so big and so full of light. It has windows everywhere. It felt so not in alignment with the process I was going through. I was actually going in and down. That was deep. The direction of my evolution, of my search. Exactly. So basically, to live in a big lit house felt so not relevant. And then I moved down to the basement where there's raccoons and rats and sometimes all kind of creatures. And I remember at night my body gets almost like densified. You know, when you live in a house, maybe on the second story or third story, when you go down, what happened to me? I started my body started to reorganize itself. The bones, the muscles, the thoughts, everything started to shift. And
I feel like that happens to me every day on a momentary basis.
Really?
Yes.
Tell me more, maybe in another interview.
No.
Because this is fascinating. Because I was going through a metamorphosis. I didn't know that back then, but all I knew is I was not resonating with the lifestyle I created. Some of my friends I kind of put aside. Some of course, my line of work, where I lived, my relationship, my intimate relationship. All of a sudden, I felt like I needed to peel away and undress everything that was not truly me. It was not an easy process. I took a year off. I sold my business and I traveled around the world to meet incredible people and to also overcome fears of traveling alone, fears of who am I, identity. And then gradually something started to emerge, but very, very gradually. I have to say that because I did go through a dark night of the soul where it's more existential, not so much depressed state, but more who am I and what is happening here? And
I know exactly what you mean, but maybe for our listeners, you can explain a little bit what that means, dark night of the soul.
For me, the dark night of the soul was questioning the deep questions that reside in me and moving very, very gently toward what feels right for me in the moment, very gently. And sometimes what feels right was separating from everything and saying goodbye to old ways of being. That was one element. The dark night of the soul feels more like a death. It's a death of an old way of being. Mm-hmm. and very gently, it's like sprouts of new Natalie, new soul were starting to come. But I couldn't say that. So, I mean, really, sometimes I want to cry because people would ask me, what happened to Natalie? My God, you were so amazing, so alive and vivacious and creating and generating. What happened to you? And I just say, I don't know. I don't want to do that anymore. And so I had to give a lot of kind of explanations to people who knew me, to say right now I'm in a quiet mode. I'm not doing anything. And not doing is a whole nother aspect of something I had to develop, being. Like, what does it mean for Natalie to just be?
Yeah.
It feels so I would say it feels...
Well, I think for everyone, we're so involved with the doing.
Yeah.
We're so involved with, what we've been taught, what we learned, what's expected of us, how we think things should be.
Yes.
And then to clear all that. And I understand about the death because in nature, things die and then they're reborn. I mean, you see this with the seasons.
Right.
And we're the same. I mean, if we want to be reborn, we have to let parts of us die that
That's
are
right.
not precise to the specific moment we're living in.
Exactly.
And I think going through that can be very painful, very scary, because it is a stillness that you have to just feel everything that's happening inside of us, and not everything we happen to like.
That's right. Exactly. I loved the analogy you brought, and it reminds me of the season. If we look at the season, we look at the winter, the seeds are deep, deep in the soil, in the earth, and it seems like there's nothing happening, but the new seed is preparing for this huge oak tree or a redwood tree that would start to grow throughout the next season. So that's exactly what happens. I didn't know that back then. This is where the ensoulment, which I will talk about, started, because only in hindsight I could actually know what was happening for me. But it felt strange, uncomfortable, scary, weird. I had no words. There's no words in this state. It's almost like a death that is dormant, that you don't quite know what to say for what's happening for you, because you're in the midst of the metamorphosis.
Well, you've left, it's like the caterpillar and the butterfly. It's like, that moment when it all changes.
That's right.
I totally get that. So you wrote a book, Ensoulment. I'll show everybody. I read it in a weekend, and it's a big book.
Thank you. What amazing.
I loved it.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So maybe you can share, because this seems like this has the essence of the process.
That's right. Part of my process was to leave. It's very interesting, but there was a leaving involved in my process, physical leaving, emotional, like I had to leave old ways of being, doing, feeling. And one of the processes led me to actually leave San Francisco, which was very profound for me. My whole community, my whole life, my businesses, my relationships, my home, everything was there. So I was called to leave. I was called to leave to Santa Monica in Southern California. And that's when the book started. I started writing. It started as a journal. I started writing what was happening for me. And, through writing, many times, things that are not quite integrated and not quite expressed, they start to come out and they start to form through writing. Mm-hmm. So the writing...
I think any expression, by the way,
right.
Through art, through writing, through dance, through any kind of art form, music, I think... that's really the food for the soul.
That's right.
And that's how the soul expresses itself.
Exactly. So that's exactly right. Art, or just experimenting or wandering around. When was the last time you just took a day off and wandered around town, wandered around nature, really look at the behavior of the light, of the ants, of what's happening around. We don't take time to wander. And
you're asking the wrong person, because I do.
Great. So I should join you. No, but that's the process I was going through. I was starting to wander. I felt comfortable with the being, non-doing, and I started to wander, including my writing, my dancing, my yoga, my meditation, my painting. I love painting. So I started playing around, and you're right, because this is the way in which the soul starts to express. She chooses. One day I would choose all black and red. Another day I would choose really light colors like pink, light blue. So it really started to show me, my creativity started showing me where I was in a way, because I did not know where I was.
Yeah.
So the writing started, and then I realized as time passed that I was going through a process that later on I called ensoulment.
I love that word, by the way.
Thank you.
Ensoulment.
Thank you.
It like when you gave me the book and I read the name ensoulment, I said, wow, that's exactly everything that I've experienced and experiencing, and in one word.
Yes.
It's amazing.
It's the becoming. It's the Jehovah.
Yeah.
It's the Yehovah. Yehovah in Hebrew is I am, I was, and I will be. It's the whole becoming. And
Right.
we are in a way living in a moment by moment becoming process.
Right.
Becoming who? Becoming our soul. Our soul is our true essence, our true potential. To embody it, to live it. So the word ensoulment actually just was downloaded to me. I don't like to use the word download because it feels so woo woo, but there's nothing woo woo about it truly, because
Yeah.
But I was all of a sudden saw the process of becoming more of who I truly am, becoming more of my soul. So that's the process started in Southern California. Well, the process of ensoulment, the way I perceive it right now, has to do with 5 phases. The first phase is the awakening. All of a sudden, you awaken to your true self, your true who you really are, but you don't really know who you are. You're just opening your eyes. The second phase is the descent into soullessness. And that's what I was sharing about what happened to me in San Francisco. When I went, I literally, the direction is down, and to kind of excavate all the dark parts, which is wounding, pain, our biggest fears, our biggest longing that are not fulfilled, to go into them, not to just know them as a concept, but to truly go inside them and swim there.
Yes.
That's the soullessness. The next phase is starting the ensoulment. The ensoulment is it's almost like you're starting to cook something, and you're starting to feel the fragrance and the taste of what you're cooking. That's the ensoulment.
To me, it's the integration
Yes.
of all the parts.
That's right.
I mean, because we are a soul, but we're also a human being. We have our mind, we have our emotions, we have our body, it's an integration of all of it into a whole.
Exactly.
In my opinion.
Exactly. That's beautiful. So after soullessness, there's an alchemy, which is what you were describing, this integration. And that integration, the next phase is ensoulment. Now, ensoulment, I would say when I moved back to Israel, I had a soul calling to come back to Israel. Primarily, I thought it's to be with my mom, who is, right now 87, and she's a wonderful lady, and I have a very close connection to her. But truly, when I moved back, I was like, oh my God, this is where I belong. This is where I need to be. So sometimes the soul, when we are connected, truly guides us to where we need to go, but it guides us in symbols, in impulses, in a sense, not quite like you should go there and you should do that. This is the mind. So I moved to Israel, and I feel like the ensoulment process truly started to blossom in Israel. And the last phase of ensoulment is the connection to the soul of the world, which I'm feeling glimpses of it every now and then. I'm not living in a continuous state of connecting to the state of to the soul of the world, but that state basically truly allows us to feel connected to everything that is happening to us and everything that we're conscious and unconscious, to truly feel like we're one wave,
Yes, we're one.
in this ocean of this evolution, this magical evolution. I mean, look what's
I'm
happening.
feeling it more and more. So if I'm feeling it more and more,
Nice.
then I'm sure you
Yes,
are too.
yes.
And it's happening more and more.
Right. Yeah.
So you also teach.
Correct.
Teach, heal.
Yes,
Can
I
you
have
tell?
a private practice where so ensoulment is not only a philosophical or psychological framework or body of work. Actually, by the end of the book is fascinating, because while I was writing the end of the book, I was learning so many things about how life evolves, which were new to me. So you know how it is when you start to write,
Right.
and you reveal that what you're writing is actually something you didn't even know. So it's not
Right.
even coming from me.
Right.
It's just moving through me. So one of the ways ensoulment is a way of looking at reality, I would say. It's not a framework. It's not a way. It's a way of looking at reality for evolving self and others, and for healing. Now, healing is the rebalancing, recalibration of a system, of an ecosystem. I believe we are an ecosystem living within large concentric ecosystems. And there's a way to evolve all of them in a way and to balance them in a way that brings the highest good and the highest thriving for all the systems. So ensoulment is also a way for healing, personal healing, relational healing, and collective healing. Many times when there are major disasters, I use ensoulment in meditation to actually heal that area of the disaster, or if there's a conflict, or if there's something really affecting me or affecting my family or affecting my friends, I can use ensoulment to heal that. Now, in my private practice...
just before you get to the private practice, because I do the same, but I'd like for you to share how you do that, because I don't know that everybody would understand. What do you mean by healing a disaster area?
Okay, so let's say when there was an earthquake or a major wave of fire in California. So I look at what is the reason that the planet created that mass fire situation. What fire? So basically, I connect with the situation as if it's happening inside me.
Okay.
And I connect with the people there, the land, the region, and with the message. And then I ask the situation itself. So based on ensoulment, everything has a soul. Mm-hmm. You have a soul. We have a soul. This room, this space, this city has a soul. Mm-hmm. And we can connect with the city or with the region, with the region's soul, and ask it what is needed for it to rebalance, to bring to the next level of integrity or of wholeness. Okay. And based on what I receive as a message, I just send this energy. I use primarily my imagination, my intention, my heart, and I just send that energy to all the residents, to the area, to the trees, to all the species, the animals, the plants that are affected by that. And also knowing that every disaster, like we talked earlier about death, so, there's always a perspective that is much more removed from the actual situation. Mm-hmm. So I look at the situation, I try to rebalance it, but I also look at what life cycle this region is going through and this country is going through and why. So I do that.
You understand there's a bigger picture.
Yes, exactly. So you ask me how I do that. So on a collective level, I just send healing. I send prayers. When, let's say, I go to a yoga class, I dedicate my yoga class to specific people who are in need right now, having challenged specific areas, specific nations. So that's on a collective level. On a personal level, in my practice, basically people come with issues, areas in their life that needs healing, needs balancing. So I look at the whole ecosystem. I always talk about ecosystem because it's one of the most important things, because all the souls are connected. If you heal one soul, but all the souls around it are actually sick or out of balance or not connected, then it doesn't matter how healthy one person is or one family or one country is, the areas around will start to infiltrate and impact. So we always look at collective healing. So when a person comes, let's say...
That.
Yeah.
I love that. Okay, sorry, go on.
Yeah. So when a person, let's say, comes with a depression or cancer, or a woman is trying to get pregnant and she cannot get pregnant, I don't only look at the physical. The physical is it's absolutely important. The physical is critical. But I look at the physical, emotional, spiritual. I look at the family, at the soul of the family, at the soul of the family of origin, at the soul itself. What's the journey of the soul? Why is she creating such turbulence in life? So when you look at everything, that everything has a soul. For example, last summer, I had many ants in my house. They just come and celebrate in my house. Now, ants are nice, but not when they're starting to...
not in your house.
Not all... But I had to connect with the energy of the ant. Ants are doers. They work together. They're always a part of a colony. So I started and the more I was able to connect, I was actually able to communicate with them to please leave my house, and they did. But it took me a while. It wasn't just right away. So I'm saying this because everything has a soul and everything can be heard and communicated with. So when a person comes for healing, I look at all these elements and I try to bring a new balance that supports all the systems.
So how long does that take? Is it a one-time meeting? Is it a process?
On average, it takes about 6 to 8 meetings.
Okay.
If after 3, 4, 5 meetings, I don't see any change in the person, the person's behavior, the person's condition, then sometimes it's not quite an energetic match, because not all healers are matching all practitioners. A person has to be open to make a real change in their life. So it takes about 6 to 8 weeks for a significant change. And so I do that. I also teach. I teach seminars. I lecture. I give talks. And now I'm writing my next book, Ensoulment number 2, because I'm getting so much new information about the planet right now and the human evolution and how critical our evolution is and how important this journey that we have here. I mean, this human experience is so, so powerful. It's powerful. It's unique. It's very sophisticated. Very. On this planet, it's really, I mean, it's one of the big masterpieces of the universe of combining spirit and matter and allowing them to come alive. So we're doing that. These 8 billion people are doing it with our own self.
Wow. So do you teach only here in Israel, or also through, through the web or in different languages?
I teach through the web. I teach mainly in English and in Hebrew.
So if someone wanted to connect, they could through the web?
Yes, definitely.
Okay,
yes.
Great.
And so that's my story.
And do you do one-on-one? Do you do groups or both?
I do one-on-one. I do groups, relatively small groups, because we go really deep into processes. Okay. So I prefer keeping it as a small group. I do lectures in different conferences, so that can be hundreds of people.
In Israel, around the world?
In Israel, in Europe, in California, in New York, around the globe. Yes.
Oh, wow.
Yes. Because Ensoulment is not just a healing modality. It's really the information that is presented in the book is really showing us how our soul is a part of the soul of the world and a part of our together soul, and how we evolve together. So there's something in the book that really is strongly connected to consciousness, to evolution, to conscious evolution. And I mainly speak in consciousness conferences, spiritual.
So just give us one example, because we're almost towards the end, believe it or not. One example of someone that you helped, how they came in, how they left, a personal story.
Okay.
Without names, of course.
Of course. So a lady came to me about 3 years ago, and she was trying very consistently and insistently to get pregnant, and she couldn't. She had a couple of abortions. She's been trying to get pregnant for about 8 years. And in this, we probably had 6 to 8 sessions. We communicated, first of all, with her own soul, her own body. We looked at all the scars and the trauma in the body because of the previous miscarriages and trauma that happened in her lineage, mother lineage. We cleared that, the physical, the emotional. And after that, we looked at connecting with the soul of the new soul that is trying to get born. We started to communicate with him, her. It was a him, and then we started connecting them and looking at what does the baby needs to truly have a safe and whole and healthy pregnancy to come to the world. And we did that, and now she has a baby. She has a child. She has now two kids. After 8 years, she couldn't have children, and she tried all the fertility program, anything you can imagine. And so Ensoulment, connecting her to her own soul, her own desire to have babies, connecting her to the soul of the newborn, and creating an environment. Because really what Ensoulment does, it creates an environment so that the soul can thrive. This is really the foundation. Because when you create an environment, it's like creating an environment for the garden. Then the garden grows by itself, the same way with the baby, with the
Wow, that's
child.
amazing. Yeah. So before we wrap it up, give us one tip or a couple of tips that you think we could leave people with.
I would ask you, and I would ask the listeners, are they connected to their soul? Do they know who their soul is? I want to leave actually with a question, less than a tip, because I feel like every ensoulment is so different. Some people go through cancer, divorce, loss, depression, but it can be also a big success. That can also be an ensoulment. So ensoulment not necessarily goes all the time through the descent into soullessness, even though the descent is really critical for the growth. Mm-hmm. But what I want to say, are you connected to your soul? Do you know your soul? Who is your soul?
I've connected to my soul on an ongoing basis. I think most of us who do spiritual work connect, disconnect, find our way back, connect, disconnect, find our way back, and actually grow the amount of soul within us. That's how I see it.
This is in soulmate. It's growing the amount of soul in beautifully. You put it so well.
So we'll conclude with that.
Yes.
Growing the soul within us.
Thank you.
Thank you so much,
Shari.
Natalie.
Thank you. Thank you very much.